David Marks was born in New York. He is interviewed by a lawyer who is asking about his parents and if they are still alive. David tells him that his father is still alive, but his mother has passed away. She had a violent passing in front of him when he was 7. The lawyer then lets him know that he wants to ask him more about his past. The scene shifts to a flashback that shows David as a boy and the loving memories he had with his mother. The scene shifts back to the present day. David Marks, who is the son of a rich real estate tycoon named Sanford Marks, is under the sink of an apartment, and the top of his formal shirt is wet. Katie, who is renting the apartment, asks if he would like a coffee. He says no, and she asks him if she is keeping him from something. She notices his business suit. He says yes, but he is dreading to go, and she says that he can blame it on her for being late. David Marks takes Katie to the dinner that he is late for. His father, Sanford Marks, has invited lots of VIPs. When Sanford sees his son, he is not impressed that he is late but takes note of Katie beside him, impressed by her beauty. He asks her for her name, and she tells him that it's Catherine McCarthy. David then is taken by his father and pressed to talk with senators and other rich businessmen. After dinner, David and Katie hang out talking about what they want to do with their lives and laughing. David says he wants to open a health food store, and he asks Katie if she thinks that sounds silly. She says that his plan sounds great. The lawyer, who is questioning David on his past, asked if his father disapproved of him marrying Katie, and David said it wasn't that. He wanted him to work in real estate with him. David has Christmas dinner with Catherine's boisterous family and is quiet, though he laughs at the family's jokes and enjoys the food. He goes into the backyard for smoking, where Katie finds him and asks why he is hiding. He says that he is not hiding. It's just very different being with her family. They actually talk to each other and are lively, something that he is not used to. Katie sits on the swing and looks up at him. David asks her to marry him. Katie bursts into a bright smile and says yes. David and Katie open their own health food store where they make their own sandwich spreads, supplements, and herbs out in the country far from David's rich family business. David's father, however, cannot accept that David doesn't want to work in the business and keeps asking and pressuring David to come back and work with him. David rejects his offers since David and Katie are happy with their store. Finally, Sanford drives out to visit David and Katie at their health food store and emotionally guilt trips David. He convinces David that Katie deserves much more than what they are doing, saying she is beautiful like his mother. This encounter affects David greatly, and with the pressure from his father, he decides to sell the store. They go back to New York to work in the real estate business with his father. The lawyer asks why he decided to sell their store, and he says that it was because he thought he was doing the right thing. Back in New York, Sanford tells David what properties he will be looking after, and a lot of them are very degraded hotels where the homeless and prostitutes hang out. The residents barely afford their rent. Later, David takes Katie to their beautiful new apartment in New York, and she is awestruck by its beautiful appearance. Then they make love. The next morning, Katie wakes up to find David sitting on the front steps of the apartment. She sits down with him in a happy mood and tells him that the apartment is going to be so beautiful. She then asks him if he has thought about having children. David seems to freeze at this question and goes very quietly. Katie asks him if that means no for now or no forever. David says it means no forever, saying there is something wrong with him. Katie takes this to mean he can't have kids for physical reasons. Later that day, Katie hears David reciting her questioning about having kids over and over to himself out loud. Katie is disturbed by this and asks David if he is okay. They attend a party with David's friends, and a black-haired girl that knows David well hugs him closely and is a little jealous of Katie. David says to a friend she can't believe people like Katie exist, saying she is perfect and that there is nothing that he does that she doesn't like. The friend laughs at this and says to him that she hasn't known him long enough yet. Meanwhile, Katie is talking to the black-haired girl, and she drops the bombshell on her. She tells that David's mother jumped from the balcony of their place and shattered her skull on the ground, and David saw the whole thing. She says that it was so strange because a week later, he acted like he never had one. Katie asks her, "One what?" "Mother," says the girl. This realization of the traumatic event and loss that David experienced sends shudders through Katie, and a sense of foreboding fills her. A few days later, David has lunch with this girl he knows, and she comments jealously that Katie is so sweet. David guardedly asks her what she told Katie. She doesn't tell David that she told Katie about him seeing his mother violently pass away. She asks David if Katie knows how messed up he truly is, and then she tells him that she can help with a great therapist. The therapist visits the Marks property to give him therapy sessions which involve screaming out all the trauma and trying to release it all. His brother is sitting outside beside the pool and is annoyed and rolls his eyes at the sounds of his screaming during the therapy sessions. Later on, they have a party at their weekend property, and Katie feels drawn to a pregnant lady. She gets talking to her on her own, and the lady says that people tend to favor Katie. Katie says maybe that's because she is pregnant. The pregnant lady is so excited, and Katie says that she is the first one she has told and she can't believe how it happened. It wasn't planned. That night, Katie tells David, but it doesn't go down well. Katie tries to persuade him to change his mind, saying she will not be like what he had growing up, referring to his mother, and David asks her what she knows about it. She just replies that she isn't blind. It is the first time Katie sees David lose his temper, as he throws an office chair at the shelf with records and books, causing it to fall down. Katie is shocked. She stands there for ages after he walks out the back, and then she follows him to sit next to him. David says she can ask him for anything, and he will do it, but just don't ask him to do this. He cannot. Katie is so beside herself knowing she will have to say goodbye to the child she is pregnant with. David doesn't offer her any comfort. They make their way together to the abortion clinic. When they pass one of David's hotels, he looks after it and sees police all around it, dragging tenants out. He tells the taxi to stop, and he gets out to make a call to his father at the phone booth. His father yells at him to get to the other hotel to take the money before the police shut down that hotel as well. He makes his way back to the taxi and tells Katie he will catch up with her. He has to do something quickly. Katie is all out of tears and just stares at him in disbelief. She goes to the abortion clinic by herself. Over time, they grow more and more apart, with David staying in the city to work for his dad and Katie moving away to study. She doesn't tell David, but she is actively applying to get into medical school. She finally gets in and is so excited. She finds out when she comes to visit David at his place, and he has opened the acceptance letter from the medical school. To her confusion, instead of being there to congratulate her, he jumps into the lake and hops onto a small yacht and rows it back to the shore, pulls it up on the bank, and spray paints numbers on it. The water is freezing, and it is cold weather. Katie asks him what he is doing. David mumbles that he needs to make sure nobody steals it. She wraps a blanket around him to keep him warm. Later, Katie's family holds a party for her to congratulate her for getting into medical school. David comes along, but he is quiet. One of her family members says to him he must be so proud of her, and he only gives a small smile, not saying anything. The family member finds this odd. They all have a meal and are laughing and joking together, having drinks afterward. When David walks over to her parents asking for his jacket, they say to him sure, he isn't leaving, and he says that they have to get back to the city. Katie is incredulous at this and asks him why they have to rush back and that she is not ready to leave yet. He just stares without explaining and says he will get the car ready. She says to him he can do what he likes, but she is not ready to go yet. He drops his eyes and says he will wait in the car. He goes to wait in the car, growing impatient. Then in a rage, he storms back into her family's house and marches over to her on the sofa and pulls her up by her hair as she screams and drags her out of the house. Her family is horrified, and no one intervenes simply because they have never seen David act like that. Back at their place in the city, Katie is packing her things and David asks her where will she go. She says to him that she has never been so close to someone and still not know who they are. The next day, she has lunch with her city friend Lauren. She goes to pay for her lunch and the card declines. Immensely embarrassed, she doesn't understand why, and then not wanting to see her in an awkward position, Lauren pays for her. Onlookers give them a strange look, and Lauren barks at them to stop staring. Katie knows David has canceled her cards. Lauren and Katie go to a lawyer to ask for advice, and she explains that the Marks family plays hardball, and if they get wind of a divorce, they will do this to protect their assets, and that David himself has no money, but his father Sanford holds it all in a trust fund, and it is them that control the money. Katie returns home for dinner, and they sit in stony silence. He asks her how her day was, and she says it was fine. He then asks her what else she did that day. In another apartment, a couple is in bed watching TV when they hear a loud banging on their terrace window. The man gets up to see who it is, and when he pulls up the blind, it is Katie in the rain, in a panic. He curses, freaking out about a woman on his terrace who is terrified. He pushes the window upwards to open it and holds her. He comforts her and asks what happened. Katie is distraught and crying, and there is a big red mark around her left eye. He turns to his wife and tells her to call the police, but Katie shakes her head, saying no repeatedly, so the wife doesn't. The man knows Katie and David. He walks across the hall and knocks on David's door to tell him that Katie is too scared to come home. David tells him to tell her everything is okay and that she can come back. The man is quite disturbed and says he thinks Katie will just stay with them the night, when suddenly Katie walks past the man and back into her apartment with David. The next day, Katie goes to David's office and makes sure he is not there. His secretary tells her that he is up having a meeting on another floor. Katie tells her she needs to make some calls in his office. Katie dials the time announcer and then leaves the receiver resting on the desk, so the secretary thinks she is making calls. But in reality, she begins searching through David's things. She is looking for what is really going on with David's hotel. She finds the file on the hotel that shut down, and she leaves his office before he sees her. She puts all the evidence in an envelope and sends it to a senator she had met. When he gets the envelope, he tells his secretary that it is nothing to do with him but a family matter. It gets into the hands of David's younger brother, who says that he is useless at work and this is more evidence, and offers to move him to a quieter office where he doesn't have to deal with people. His father hands over the empire to his younger brother and not him. He tells David that he is weak and that he should have just given Katie what she wanted. This mentally affects David in such a negative way. His behavior and personalities start to break down even more. Katie is at her brother's house and rings David in tears. He also is in tears and tells her he can make everything better. He wants her to come home. Even though Katie has been drinking, she heads out to her car and her brother asks her what she is doing. She tells him she has to go home, and he says to her that she cannot since she has been drinking. Later, she hangs up her coat and gets a fright when David says hi. She is surprised that he is there when she thought he was still at his apartment. She asks him where Ivan, their husky dog, is, and he says that he is at the kennel. She is confused that he sent him there because he hates kennels, and David says that he bit him. David then asks Katie if she is hungry, and they have dinner together. They are awkwardly silent when David says she would have made a good mother. Katie is greatly disturbed by this random comment and spits out her food and puts it in the bin. She then goes and takes the trash out to the garage and notices Ivan's bandana covered in blood. Knowing it means that David didn't take him to a kennel but eliminated him, she screws the bandana in her hand, fighting back tears, and heads back into the house to confront David. When she gets in there, she is sobbing and angry at the same time. She lifts the bandana to show David she knows he lied, and he remains half in the shadows, not responding, just looking back at Kate. At some later time, David calls his father from his apartment. His father arrives at the apartment. His father is cold towards him and asks what he is doing there. David asks his father why he let him watch his mother jump off the terrace to take her own life. He says he thought she was asleep and went to touch her head, but his father doesn't want to hear any of it. He finally tells David he left him out there hoping that she wouldn't do it if David was out there with her. Sanford then says he is going and tells David to go home to his wife. David says simply that she's gone. Sanford asks what he means, and all David says in response is that he is exactly like his father. Sanford follows David out of the house yelling his name in order for him to explain. Katie Marks is reported missing, and Katie's brother and his wife drive around all day putting up missing person posters. Katie's brother cries when he gets back into his car. In the year 2000, the case of the disappearance of Katie Marks is reopened when new evidence is found. This is in part because of an unfinished manuscript that David's friend Deborah wrote that recalls a murder with similarities to the circumstances of Katie's disappearance. The lawyer continues to question David Marks and asks if he was a suspect. He says no, but he still received negative attention from the press. So he decided to try to not be David Marks anymore and be someone else. He recalls that he moved to another city and pretended to be a mute woman, dressing up as a woman to hide away. He made friends with another tenant named Malvern Bump. While hiding away, Deborah rings to warn him that she is getting harassed by police who want to find him and that she also needs money. He doesn't respond, but she keeps leaving him voicemail messages. David spends time with Malvern talking about their lives. Eventually, David says to Malvern that he feels he is someone he can trust and that he might need him one day to help. He then hands Malvern the keys to his apartment, saying he can watch TV whenever he wants to because he knows he is getting evicted. David takes Malvern along with him, pretending to look at houses to buy, and leads him to believe that he will let Malvern move in with him. He says to Malvern that he has paid a deposit on a house. Deborah tries to ring David again, this time threatening to come and see her, otherwise she will go public with everything, hinting at the murder of his wife Katie. This is where David gets Malvern to help him. Deborah comes home to see that someone has gotten into her house and the TV is on loud. Deborah is not worried because she assumes it's David. She tells him to turn the TV down or he will go deaf. She goes to bend over to turn it down when Malvern stands behind her and shoots her point blank in the head. He rings from a phone box to let David know he has done everything, but can't get a hold of him. He rings again on his way home, letting David know he knows he never made the deposit on the house and is angry he lied to him, but still no answer. He makes himself at home on David's lounge and watches TV. David comes home and quietly opens the door, careful not to alert Malvern, but Malvern turns around suddenly and jumps up angrily, telling him he trusted him. Before Malvern can talk, David attacks him and hits him several times in the head with objects, including a telephone. Then he shoots Malvern to corroborate the story that he tells the jury that it is self-defense. He then tells the jury he didn't call the police as he knew no one would believe him that it was self-defense, so he had to get rid of the body. The lawyer then asks David if there is anything else that he would like the jury to know. He says no, but he is thinking of his father, how he chased David out of the house when David said Katie had gone, and he was just like him. David's father watches David walks off and then wearily approaches David's car. He opens the boot and stands there with widened eyes. David was found not guilty by the jury for Malvern Bump's death, but he was charged with inappropriate misuse of a dead body and spent 9 months in jail. He was not convicted of Deborah's murder, and Katie is still classed as a missing person case. David visited his father one last time before his dad passed away. He leans into his father's ear and remembers the healthy food shop, the simple, beautiful life he had with Katie, and says to him that he misses her so much.